presented by Soundlibra.com. Explore more titles via the link in the description or at Soundlibra.com. Welcome to the Procrastination Fix. Let's explore why we delay.
And I'm Lisa. We're excited to dive into this journey with you.
Before we jump in, a quick heads up. While we're exploring the psychology of habits, this podcast is for educational purposes only and isn't a substitute for professional mental health advice.
That's an important point. So, today we're tackling the million-dollar question, why do we procrastinate? It's A.
Welcome back. Last time we explored why we delay things. Now let's unpack the psychology behind that habit of saying later.
That's right, Alex. Last time we established that procrastination isn't just laziness, it's often a complex psychological response. Today, we're digging deeper into why this response becomes a habit. How do we get stuck in that cycle of putting things off, and what are we actually getting out of it, even if it's not serving us in the long run?
Exactly. So think about habits in general. They're essentially shortcuts our brains create. When we repeat an action and it leads to a certain outcome, our brain learns to link that action and outcome. Over time, the action becomes almost automatic. Procrastination is no different. We repeatedly delay a task, and for a short while, we feel a sense of relief or comfort. This immediate, albeit temporary, reward strengthens the habit. It's like taking the easy road when faced with a challenging climb.
So that reward is the key to understanding why the habit sticks. Even though we know delaying a task will lead to stress later, the immediate escape from that discomfort feels good in the moment. It's like eating a piece of cake when you're trying to be healthy. The immediate pleasure overrides the long-term goal.
Precisely. And this leads us to one of the core psychological drivers, task aversion. We simply avoid tasks that trigger negative emotions. These emotions can include boredom, anxiety, frustration, or even a feeling of inadequacy. If a task feels unpleasant, our natural inclination is to move away from it. Procrastination becomes our escape mechanism.
Task aversion. That makes a lot of sense. If a task feels overwhelming, or we don't know where to start, or we're just plain not interested, our brain says, nope, not doing that right now. And then, poof, we're scrolling through social media or tidying our desk.
Indeed. And this aversion can be fueled by several deeper psychological factors. One of the biggest is the fear of failure. If we don't start something, or if we do a poor job, we might unconsciously feel that our worth is diminished. So, procrastination becomes a way to protect our ego. If we don't try, we can't technically fail. Or if we do fail, we can blame it on not having enough time or not trying our best, rather than a lack of ability.
The classic, if I don't try, I can't fail. That's a powerful one. It's like a kid who's afraid to try out for the sports team. They might say they don't want to play anyway, but deep down, they're scared of not being good enough. So they avoid the tryouts altogether.
That's a perfect analogy. And this fear of failure is closely linked to perfectionism. Many people who procrastinate are perfectionists. They have such high standards for themselves that the thought of not meeting those standards is paralyzing. They believe they need the perfect conditions, the perfect mindset, or the perfect amount of time to start. If those aren't present, they delay, telling themselves they'll do a better job when everything is just right.
Oh, I can relate to that. The idea that I have to do something perfectly means I often don't start it at all. It's a strange paradox, isn't it? Wanting something to be perfect causes it to never happen. It's like waiting for the perfect moment to paint a masterpiece, but you never pick up the brush because you haven't found the perfect shade of blue yet.
Exactly. The pursuit of perfection can become a gilded cage, preventing us from taking action at all. And speaking of comfort zones, that's another significant element. Our brains are wired to seek comfort and avoid discomfort. When a task pushes us out of our comfort zone, makes us feel uncertain or vulnerable, our ingrained habit of procrastination kicks in to return us to that familiar sense of ease.
So, even if that ease is actually the feeling of dread before a deadline, it's still familiar ease, right? It's like staying in a bad relationship because it's known, rather than leaving for the uncertainty of being single.
That's a very insightful way to put it. The unknown, even if it promises potential growth and a better outcome, can be more frightening than the known discomfort. And the subconscious rewards we get from procrastination become reinforced. We get that immediate dopamine hit from avoiding the task, from feeling that fleeting sense of relief. Our brain registers this as a positive reinforcement, even though we know intellectually it's detrimental.
So, we're basically hardwiring this avoidance behavior. It's like when you're learning to ride a bike and you wobble and almost fall. You might instinctively grab onto something stable. If you keep doing that every time you wobble, you never learn to balance on your own. Procrastination is our stability grab, preventing us from truly mastering the ride.
That's a great way to visualize it, Lisa. And it's not just about large, daunting tasks either. This habit can manifest in small, everyday things. Putting off answering an email, delaying a phone call, not putting dishes in the dishwasher immediately. Each of these small acts reinforces the neural pathway for avoidance.
It's almost insidious how it creeps into everything. So, if task aversion, fear of failure, perfectionism, and comfort zones are the psychological underpinnings, how do we even begin to distinguish between them in our own behavior? It feels like they all blend together.
That's a fantastic question. And the first step is self-awareness. We need to become detectives of our own minds. When you find yourself delaying a task, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Am I bored? Anxious? Overwhelmed? What am I afraid might happen if I start this task? What is the worst case scenario in my mind? What is the immediate relief I'm getting from delaying?
So, it's about introspection, really paying attention to the emotional and mental landscape as we approach a task. Instead of just reacting and procrastinating, we're pausing to understand the why behind the reaction.
Exactly. And with this self-awareness, we can start to identify our personal procrastination triggers. For example, is it always the same type of task that you put off? Is it tasks that require intense concentration? Tasks that are ill-defined? Or tasks that you don't see an immediate benefit from?
That's a good point. I notice if a task involves a lot of research or planning, I'm much more likely to put it off than if it's something I can just do. I think for me, the lack of a clear, immediate outcome makes it harder to get started. It feels like I'm just circling without getting anywhere.
And that feeling of circling without getting anywhere is the task aversion manifesting as boredom or a lack of motivation. Our brains crave progress. When a task feels like it's going nowhere, it's less appealing. This is where understanding the psychological reward is so crucial. We might be unconsciously seeking the reward of feeling busy or feeling like we're working on something as opposed to actually making progress on the intended task.
It's like we're substituting busy work for productive work, and that busy work gives us that temporary hit of, I'm doing something. It feels so counterintuitive, but it totally clicks when you frame it as a psychological reward.
It does. And this is where we begin to lay the groundwork for breaking these ingrained habits. We can't change what we don't understand. By dissecting the psychological drivers behind our procrastination, we begin to dismantle its power. We realize that the comfort we seek by delaying is often a short-lived illusion, and the true reward lies in facing the task head-on.
So, to recap this episode, we've learned that procrastination isn't just a behavior, but a habit driven by our psychology. We explored how task aversion, fear of failure, perfectionism, and the desire to stay in our comfort zones all contribute to this habit. And crucially, we touched on the subtle psychological rewards we subconsciously seek by delaying, which reinforce these avoidance behaviors. The key takeaway is that understanding why we procrastinate, identifying our triggers and the feelings we're trying to escape or achieve, is the essential first step to breaking free from the cycle.
Absolutely. And in our next episode, we're going to build on this understanding. If recognizing the habit is the first step to breaking it, then the next logical step is learning how to initiate action, even when those psychological barriers are present. We'll be tackling the art of the first step.
Looking forward to that. It feels like understanding the battleground is half the war.
Precisely. So, join us next time on the Procrastination Fix as we learn to take that crucial first step. Welcome back to the Procrastination Fix. We're tackling the art of the first step.
The anticipation of a big project can feel overwhelming. We'll break down how to make that first action feel manageable.
Let's revisit task aversion from episode 2. The first step is often the most aversive part.
So, if the problem is task aversion at the start, what's the solution?
Make that first step so easy that it's almost harder not to do it. This is where the 2-minute rule comes in.
I know the rule for immediate tasks. How does it apply to bigger projects?
We adapt it. Ask yourself, what is something I can do in the next 2 minutes related to this task that will move me forward? For writing a report, open the document and write the title.
So, it's about overcoming initial inertia, not making significant progress.
Precisely. Think of pushing a heavy boulder. The hardest part is getting it to budge. Those first 2 minutes are about that initial push, lowering the perceived effort.
It reframes the daunting task. Instead of write a 5,000-word essay, it's open the document and type the title.
And you might write a second sentence, then a third, or enter a flow state. But even if you only do those initial 2 minutes, you've broken through the barrier of inaction.
It's almost like a psychological hack, not demanding a lot at the beginning.
It is. And to make this effective, we need clarity about that first step. Vague intentions lead to no actions.
So, how do we get that clarity for the first step?
We break down not just the task, but the initiation of the task. Let's say you need to prepare a presentation. Your first step is not prepare presentation. What's a 2-minute action related to it?
It could be finding the presentation file from last year or searching for a relevant image.
Perfect. So, if your goal is to prepare the presentation, your first step might be to open your cloud storage, navigate to the correct folder, and open that folder. That's it.
And once that folder is open, the next 2-minute step might be creating a new blank presentation file.
Exactly. And then perhaps typing the title slide. We're progressively making it easier to continue. Each small action builds on the last.
It's like creating a trail of breadcrumbs that lead you forward, and each crumb is incredibly easy to pick up.
That's a great analogy. This is the core principle, making the initial action ridiculously easy. If it still feels like a big effort, break it down further.
What about tasks that are inherently messy, like calling a service provider?
Let's say the task is call the plumber. What's the fear there? Usually, it's the unknown, the potential conversation, the follow-up.
Right. It's not just the act of dialing.
So, what's a 2-minute step to initiate calling the plumber? It could be finding their phone number.
Okay, so I look up the plumber's number and put it in my phone or on a sticky note.
Exactly. Or even just finding the paper where you last wrote it down. That's your 2-minute action. The next 2-minute action might be to dial the number. Once it rings, you can decide if you want to continue the call or step away.
The commitment is minimal. You're not committing to a 30-minute conversation, just to the first tiny action.
And this builds momentum. Momentum is key to overcoming inertia. When you take a small step, you create a tiny bit of forward motion. This motion makes the next step slightly easier.
So, the first step is like the spark that ignites the engine.
Precisely. Another powerful technique is to visualize the start of the task, not the entire completion. When we visualize the whole project, it looks enormous.
That's overwhelming. How does visualizing just the start help?
Imagine you need to clean your entire house. Thinking about that is daunting. But visualizing yourself putting on your cleaning gloves and grabbing the first spray bottle, that's manageable.
So focus on the immediate, physical actions of beginning.
Yes, it's about switching your focus from the daunting whole to the achievable beginning. This shift in focus is crucial. It makes the mental hurdle of starting much smaller.
It sounds simple, but I can see how powerful it would be. Instead of dreading the entire mountain, I just focus on taking that first step up the path.
And when you make that first step incredibly easy, it also combats a lot of the self-criticism that comes with procrastination. You're not failing to start a big task. You're succeeding at a very small one.
That's a great point. It reframes our internal narrative from, I'm a procrastinator, to I just did the first small step.
Exactly. And to further support this, consider setting clear, unambiguous first steps. Instead of work on the project, aim for open the project file on my computer.
Specificity is key. If the instruction is vague, the brain can easily find reasons not to start.
It can. Think of it like a treasure map. The instructions need to be precise to lead you to the treasure. If the instruction is go somewhere, you won't get far. If it's take 3 steps forward, you know what to do.
And we've talked about breaking down tasks before, but this is about breaking down the initiation of the task.
Yes, it's a different layer of breakdown. It's not about decomposing the project's components, but decomposing the act of beginning.
So, for any task that feels daunting, we identify the absolute smallest, easiest, most concrete action that can be done immediately.
And we commit to doing just that. For example, if you need to declutter your closet, your first step might be to open the closet door. That's it. That takes seconds and minimal effort.
And once the door is open, the next ridiculously easy step might be to take out one item.
Precisely. You create a series of these easily achievable micro actions. It's not about reaching the finish line immediately. It's about ensuring you take that first step and then that next one.
This addresses the psychological barrier of starting head on. It's about making the decision to start as effortless as possible.
It truly is. And a related concept that helps immensely is preparing your environment for that first step.
How does that work?
If you know your first step is to write, have your laptop open, your notebook ready, and your pen uncapped before you even intend to start. Reduce any friction.
So, you remove the small obstacles that might make you hesitate even when you've decided to begin.
Exactly. For example, if your first step is to exercise, lay out your workout clothes the night before. This removes the decision-making and physical effort required in the moment of starting.
This makes it almost automatic. It leverages the power of habit and convenience to initiate action.
It does. Think of it as priming the pump. You're making the water flow easier when you eventually turn the handle.
So, to recap for our listeners, to conquer the art of the first step, we make it ridiculously easy using the 2-minute rule adaptation. We get crystal clear on what that first action is, focus on visualizing just the beginning, prepare our environment to minimize friction, and by taking this tiny step, we build momentum.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. It's about demystifying the start and making it less daunting than the anticipation itself. Remember, the biggest hurdle is often just getting started.
And by making that start incredibly simple, we overcome it.
Indeed. Next episode, we'll build on this by exploring the power of microtasks. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to the Procrastination Fix. Last time, we talked about the crucial art of taking that very first step. Now, let's build on that by tackling one of the biggest reasons we delay, when a task feels way too big to even start.
That's so true, Alex. We've all been there, staring at a massive project, feeling completely paralyzed. It's like looking up at a mountain and thinking, how on earth am I supposed to climb that?
Exactly. And that feeling of overwhelm is a huge trigger for procrastination. Our brains see a giant task and they go into avoidance mode. But what if there's a way to make that mountain feel, well, a lot less like a mountain?
I'm ready to hear it. Please tell me it involves a magic potion.
Not quite a magic potion, but it's pretty close. It's the power of breaking things down. Specifically, we're talking about transforming those monumental tasks into what we call microtasks. Think of it as dissecting that mountain into tiny, manageable pebbles.
Microtasks. So, instead of write a book, it becomes write one sentence. That sounds really small.
It is small, and that's the beauty of it. Remember how we discussed the importance of initiating action? Microtasks are the ultimate tool for making that initiation incredibly easy. A microtask is a fraction of a larger task, so small that it requires almost no effort to begin. The goal isn't to complete the whole project with one microtask. It's simply to get started.
So, the benefit isn't necessarily speed, but reducing that initial resistance?
Precisely. When a task is broken down into tiny, achievable units, the mental barrier to starting plummets. Imagine you have to write a 50,000-word novel. That's daunting. But what if your first micro task is simply to open a new document and type the title? Or write one sentence about the main character? Suddenly, it feels much, much more doable.
Okay, I'm starting to see it. It lowers the perceived effort required to get going. My brain isn't screaming run anymore.
Exactly. And once you've completed that first tiny step, something remarkable happens. You build a tiny bit of momentum. You've proven to yourself that you can, in fact, make progress. This leads us to the next key benefit, tangible progress.
Tangible progress. What do you mean by that?
While with large, amorphous tasks, it's hard to feel like you're actually getting anywhere. You might spend hours researching for a project, but if you can't see a concrete outcome, it's easy to feel like you're just spinning your wheels. Micro tasks, however, are by definition concrete. You complete one, and it's done. You check something off. You have a tangible win.
So it's like collecting little points. Each micro task completed is a point, and those points add up to a feeling of accomplishment, even if the overall goal is still far away.
That's a fantastic analogy, Lisa. It's about creating a series of small victories. These victories can fuel your motivation. When you see that list of completed micro tasks growing, it's a powerful visual reminder that you're moving forward. This is especially helpful when you're feeling discouraged or unmotivated. You can look at your list and think, okay, I did these 10 things today. I can probably do one more.
This also sounds like it combats the all or nothing thinking that often accompanies procrastination. You know, the idea that if you can't do it perfectly, or if you can't do it all at once, then why bother doing anything at all?
You've hit the nail on the head. Micro tasks actively dismantle that perfectionist trap. They encourage you to focus on doing something rather than doing everything perfectly. The perfectionist might get stuck on how to phrase that first sentence perfectly. The micro tasker just writes a sentence, and you can always go back and refine it later. The important thing is to get it down.
Right. The act of writing itself is the goal of the microtask, not the literary perfection of that specific sentence.
Exactly. So let's talk about how to break down these large tasks. There are a few effective frameworks. One is called hierarchical decomposition.
Hierarchical decomposition. That sounds complicated.
It sounds more complex than it is. Think of it like an organizational chart or a tree. You start with your main, big goal at the top. Then you break that down into major phases or components. Then you break those components down into smaller, actionable steps. And you keep going until each step is small enough to be a micro task.
So, if the big goal is renovate the kitchen, a major phase might be install cabinets. Then, under that, You'd have steps like measure cabinet placement, order cabinets, receive cabinets, unpack cabinets, assemble cabinet frames, attach hinges, and so on.
Perfect example. You're already getting it. You break the broad goal into progressively smaller and more specific parts. Each level of the hierarchy is a decomposition of the level above it.
And when do you stop breaking it down? When does a step become a microtask?
That's a great question, and it's somewhat subjective, but there are good guidelines. A micro task should be something you can realistically accomplish in a short, defined period. Let's say from 5 minutes to an hour, depending on the context. It should be specific, meaning you know exactly what you need to do. And it should be something you can start immediately without needing extensive preparation or further planning.
So, order cabinets might be a step, but research cabinet prices online for 2 hours is not a microtask, it's a subtask. Or call 3 cabinet suppliers could be a microtask.
That's a good distinction. The key is that a micro task should bring you a sense of completion relatively quickly. It shouldn't require you to make a major decision or invest a huge amount of time. It's about action. So, for our kitchen example, call 3 cabinet suppliers would be a micro task. Once you've done that, you've accomplished something concrete.
What about tasks that seem less physical, like writing or brainstorming? How do you break those down into microtasks?
Excellent point. For creative or intellectual tasks, think about the smallest possible unit of progress. For writing, as we mentioned, it could be write one sentence, write one paragraph, outline one section, or even find one statistic to support a point. For brainstorming, it might be write down one idea or consider one angle of the problem.
So, for a research paper, if the big goal is write a research paper, the major phases might be research, outline, draft, edit. Then, under research, microtasks could be find 3 relevant academic articles, read the abstract of Article A, take notes on Section 1 of Article B, identify potential keywords for further searches.
Exactly. You're making the abstract process of research into very concrete, manageable actions. And notice how many of those are about finding or reading or taking notes. These are all small, discrete actions.
This also helps with clarity. When you break something down, you naturally start to understand the individual components much better.
Absolutely. It forces you to think through the process. Often, the reason we procrastinate on a big task is that we haven't fully thought through all the steps involved. Decomposition makes that planning process explicit. Another helpful framework, especially for tasks that seem to have a lot of interconnected parts, is called precedent analysis.
Precedent analysis. Is that about what needs to happen before something else can happen?
You've got it. In any project, some tasks must be completed before others can begin. Precedent analysis involves identifying these dependencies. You're essentially mapping out the logical flow of the project.
So, for our kitchen renovation, you can't install cabinets until they've been ordered and delivered. Those are precedents.
Precisely. By understanding what must come first, you can ensure you're tackling tasks in the right order. This prevents a lot of frustration and wasted effort. It also helps you identify potential bottlenecks early on. If ordering cabinets takes a long time, you know you need to start that well in advance.
This also helps prevent that feeling of being stuck where you're ready to do task B, but you can't because you haven't finished task A, which you've been putting off.
That's a very common procrastination trap. By mapping out the precedents, you create a clear roadmap. And from that roadmap, you can then carve out your micro tasks. For instance, your micro task for getting cabinets ordered might be identify 2 potential cabinet suppliers, check supplier websites for product catalogs, schedule a call with supplier A.
So, hierarchical decomposition helps you break down the what, and precedent analysis helps you figure out the when, and then you create microtasks from that structured understanding.
You've summarized it perfectly, Lisa. It's a powerful combination. Now, let's talk about one of the most significant psychological benefits of this approach, reducing mental load.
Mental load. I feel like I'm carrying a lot of that already.
We all do. Our brains have a limited capacity for holding onto information and managing tasks. When you have a massive, undefined project looming, your brain is constantly trying to keep track of everything I need to do for this project. It's like having 100 browser tabs open in your mind, all related to one giant task. It's exhausting and distracting.
And that exhaustion makes you want to close all the tabs, which means avoiding the project altogether.
Exactly. By breaking down the project into micro tasks and writing them down, and we'll talk more about where to write them down in future episodes, you offload that mental burden. Your brain no longer needs to juggle all the possibilities. Instead, it can focus on just the one small task at hand.
So, instead of one giant, fuzzy, overwhelming project in my head, I have a clear, actionable, do this one thing now on my to-do list.
Precisely. It's like decluttering your mental workspace. And when your mental workspace is clear, you have more cognitive resources available for actually doing the work. You're not expending energy just trying to remember what you're supposed to do next.
This also sounds like it dramatically reduces decision fatigue. So many of us procrastinate because we have to make so many decisions about what to do, when to do it, how to do it.
Decision fatigue is a huge factor. By predefining your micro tasks, you've already made many of those decisions. When it's time to work, you can simply pick up the next micro task on your list and go. The decision of what to do has already been made.
So, a concrete to-do list populated with microtasks becomes a kind of cheat sheet for your brain, bypassing the need for constant decision-making.
That's a great way to put it. It's a system that minimizes friction. And remember how we talked about the power of habit formation? Microtasks are fantastic for building productive habits. When you consistently complete small, manageable tasks, you're training your brain to engage in productive behavior.
It's like training wheels for building good habits. You start with something easy to get the hang of it.
Exactly. And the more you practice completing these micro tasks, the more automatic the process becomes. Eventually, breaking down tasks and starting them might feel much more natural. We've also found that this method helps immensely with self-efficacy.
Self-efficacy. That's the belief in one's own ability to succeed, right?
That's it. Every time you complete a micro task, you're reinforcing your belief that you can accomplish things. These small successes build a strong foundation of self-efficacy. And as we know, a strong sense of self-efficacy is a powerful antidote to procrastination. Because if you believe you can do it, you're much more likely to try.
So, to recap, breaking down large tasks into microtasks helps us overcome overwhelm by making tasks seem more manageable. It provides tangible progress and a sense of accomplishment. It dismantles perfectionism, forces clear planning, reduces mental load and decision fatigue, and ultimately builds our self-efficacy. That's a lot of power packed into something so simple.
It really is. Think of it as a fundamental strategy for making progress on anything that feels daunting. It's about making the impossible possible one tiny step at a time. It's the practical application of how to eat an elephant one bite at a time.
And it directly connects back to our discussion about taking that first step. Microtasks just make that first step incredibly accessible.
Exactly. They're the gateway to action. So, as you go forward, I encourage you to try this. Take one project you've been avoiding and dedicate some time to breaking it down. Don't worry about perfect execution yet. Just focus on identifying the smallest possible actions.
It's like turning a huge, scary monster into a manageable pile of Lego bricks that you can then start putting together one by one.
A perfect visual. And the next step in our journey is to look at how we can enlist the help of others and the power of deadlines, which we'll delve into in our upcoming episodes.
Looking forward to it.
Next episode, the accountability advantage, external support systems. Welcome back. Last time we covered breaking down tasks. Now let's discuss accountability.
That's right, Alex. Procrastination often feels like a solo mission, a personal battle fought in the quiet corners of our own minds. But what if I told you that bringing others into that mission could be one of your most powerful weapons? Today, we're exploring how external support systems, accountability, can be the secret ingredient to finally finishing what we start.
Exactly, Lisa. And it's a concept that's surprisingly simple, yet profoundly effective. At its core, accountability means having someone or something outside of yourself to answer to. It's about creating an external commitment that can anchor you, especially when your internal motivation starts to dip. Think of it like this. When you're training for a marathon, you might have a running buddy. You're less likely to skip a run if you know your friend is waiting for you.
That's a great analogy, Alex. It's that shared commitment. So, how do we translate this into practical terms for tackling our own tasks and projects? What are some of the ways we can build this accountability advantage?
There are so many wonderful ways, and the best approach often depends on your personality and the nature of your tasks. One of the most direct methods is finding an accountability partner. This is someone, a friend, colleague, or even a family member, with whom you agree to share your goals and progress.
And this partner doesn't necessarily have to be doing the same thing as you, right?
Correct. They just need to be committed to checking in and providing support. You might agree to text them at the end of each day with a summary of your accomplishments, or perhaps have a weekly call to discuss challenges and successes. The key is regularity and a clear understanding of what you're both agreeing to. You're essentially creating a shared responsibility for each other's progress.
So, it's not just about reporting your wins. It's also about admitting when you've struggled.
Precisely. And that's where the real magic happens. When you have to explain to someone else why you missed a target or why you felt stuck, it forces a level of introspection you might otherwise avoid. It prompts you to analyze your behavior and, more importantly, to find solutions. It's like shining a light into those shadowy corners where procrastination likes to hide.
I can see how that would be powerful. Sometimes, just the thought of having to explain a lapse in effort is enough to keep you on track. It's that psychological nudge.
Absolutely. And speaking of nudges, another effective strategy is using technology. There are numerous apps and online platforms designed specifically for accountability. Some allow you to set goals and track your progress, and they'll send you reminders or even connect you with a community of like-minded individuals.
I've seen those. Some of them gamify the process, which can be really motivating for certain people. You earn points or badges for sticking to your schedule.
Yes, and they can be very effective for those who respond well to external rewards and a sense of competition, even if it's just a competition with yourself. But for many, the personal connection of a human accountability partner is irreplaceable. It offers empathy and understanding that an app, however sophisticated, simply can't replicate.
What about more structured forms of accountability? Like if you're working on a more professional or academic goal.
That's where mentors or coaches come in. A mentor or coach is someone with experience and expertise who can guide you, offer advice, and provide a higher level of accountability. They're invested in your success and can offer objective feedback. They can help you refine your goals, identify potential roadblocks, and hold you to a higher standard.
So, they're not just cheerleaders, they're also strategic advisors, helping you navigate the path.
Exactly. And this type of accountability often involves more formal check-ins, perhaps with predefined milestones and outcomes. It's a more intensive relationship, but the rewards in terms of progress can be substantial.
I'm also thinking about group accountability. Sometimes, being part of a team working towards a common goal can be incredibly motivating.
You've hit on a crucial point, Lisa. Group accountability is incredibly powerful. Think about study groups in college or even a book club. When you're part of a group, you're not just letting yourself down if you don't follow through. You're letting your peers down too. This shared responsibility amplifies the pressure to perform and contributes to a collective sense of momentum.
That's like those co-working or co-studying sessions that have become popular. People gather, often online, and simply work alongside each other. There's no direct task delegation, but the presence of others working creates an atmosphere of productivity.
Precisely. It's a form of ambient accountability. The environment itself fosters focus, and the visual cue of others being productive can be a powerful stimulus. It reminds you that you're not alone in your efforts and that the work is getting done. This connects back to episode 4, where we talked about breaking tasks down. Imagine a group where everyone commits to completing certain micro tasks by a specific time. That shared commitment becomes a powerful driver.
It really does. So, let's recap some of these accountability strategies we discussed. We have the one-on-one accountability partner, where you regularly check in with a friend or colleague.
Right? Then there are accountability apps and online platforms that use technology to track progress and provide reminders.
We also touched on mentors and coaches, who offer guidance and a higher level of structured accountability.
And finally, the power of group accountability, whether in formal teams or in formal co-working sessions, where the collective momentum fuels individual progress. Remember, each of these methods revolves around creating an external commitment that strengthens your internal resolve.
This is so valuable, Alex. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking we can do everything on our own, but sometimes the most effective path forward involves leaning on others. It shifts the focus from an internal battle to a shared journey.
And that journey is so much smoother when you have people walking alongside you. Now, a common question that arises when discussing accountability is, what if I pick the wrong person? Or what if my accountability partner isn't being accountable themselves?
That's a really important point. It's not always foolproof.
Indeed, the first step is choosing wisely. Look for someone who is reliable, supportive, and also has some goals they're working towards themselves, so it feels like a mutual exchange. Be clear about your expectations from the outset. What do you want from them? How often should you check in? What kind of feedback is helpful? Have an open and honest conversation.
And if things aren't working, it's okay to reassess and perhaps find a different partner or adjust the system. It's not about rigid adherence to a flawed plan, but about finding what truly supports your progress.
Absolutely. Flexibility is key, and sometimes the wrong person can still be a catalyst for learning. Perhaps their unreliability teaches you the importance of setting clearer boundaries or finding someone more committed. Every experience can be a lesson.
I also think it's important to acknowledge that accountability isn't about being shamed or criticized. It's about support and growth. The tone of the check-ins matters.
Crucially, a good accountability relationship is built on trust and mutual respect. It should feel like a safe space to be vulnerable about your challenges, not a judgment hall. When you can be honest about setbacks, that's when you can truly get to the root of why they're happening.
And that honesty is what allows for problem solving. If I tell my accountability partner I'm struggling to start a task, they might ask me what's hard about it. Is it the fear of failure? Is it a lack of clarity? Is it simply not knowing where to begin? And we can work through it together.
Exactly. And this naturally leads us to the dynamics of deadlines, which we will be exploring in our next episode. Deadlines often provide an inherent form of external pressure. But how do we harness that pressure effectively, rather than letting it paralyze us? That's the focus for episode 6, Deadline Dynamics. Harnessing pressure, not fearing it.
So, to quickly recap where we are in our journey, we've learned how to dismantle overwhelming tasks into manageable microsteps, and today, we've discovered the immense power of external support systems. We've explored various ways to build accountability, from partners and apps to mentors and groups, all designed to provide that crucial nudge and create external commitment. Remember, you don't have to face your procrastination battles alone.
Indeed, by leveraging the accountability advantage, you can turn those solo struggles into shared successes. It's about building a network of support that propels you forward.
Join us next time as we explore how to make deadlines work for you, not against you.
Next episode, Deadline Dynamics. Welcome back to the Procrastination Fix. Today, we're diving into deadlines.
Deadlines. The classic procrastination trigger. For so many of us, the word itself conjures up images of frantic late-night work sessions, a rising tide of anxiety, and that all too familiar feeling of being overwhelmed. But Alex, you hinted that deadlines don't have to be our enemy. How can we possibly learn to harness this pressure instead of fearing it?
That's exactly the core of it. Lisa, for years, we've been conditioned to see deadlines as these scary, immovable walls. We associate them with judgment, with failure if we don't meet them. But what if we reframe them? What if we saw deadlines not as a threat, but as a tool?
A tool? That's an interesting way to put it. My brain immediately goes to stressful event. How can something stressful be a tool?
Think about it. A deadline provides structure and focus. It gives us a clear endpoint, a target to aim for. Without a deadline, a task can feel like it could go on forever, right? There's no sense of urgency, no clear cue to finally buckle down. Procrastinators can often fall into the trap of perpetual planning or endless refining because there's no external force pushing them to completion.
That makes sense. I can definitely relate to endlessly fiddling with something because there's no stop signal. It just evolves.
Exactly. And that's where the magic of deadlines comes in. When we effectively use deadlines, they create a sense of urgency. This urgency can actually boost our focus and productivity. It's like a gentle nudge or sometimes a firm push to get us moving. Psychologically, a deadline activates the brain's preparedness for action. It signals that it's time to shift from thinking and planning to doing.
So, instead of thinking of a deadline as the end of the world if I'm not perfect, we should think of it as the signal to start producing?
Precisely. It's about understanding that a deadline can actually make our work better and faster. When you have a firm date, your brain starts to prioritize and allocate resources more efficiently. You're less likely to get sidetracked because the primary goal is to meet that finish line. This ties back beautifully to our earlier episodes. Remember how we talked about breaking down tasks into microtasks? Deadlines are the perfect framework for managing those microtasks.
Oh, I see. So, if a big project has a deadline, we break it down into smaller steps, and then we can assign mini deadlines to each of those steps. That way, we're not facing one massive, terrifying end date, but a series of manageable checkpoints.
You got it. This is often called progressive deadline, setting or creating interim deadlines. Instead of one daunting final deadline, you set several smaller ones along the way. For example, if you have a report due in a month, you might set a deadline for completing the research in the first week, outlining in the second week, drafting the first half in the third week, and then a final review and polish in the last week.
And I imagine that each of those interim deadlines provides a sense of accomplishment when you meet it, which then fuels your motivation for the next one. It's like a cascade of mini wins.
Exactly. It builds momentum. Each completed interim deadline acts as a positive reinforcement, making the overall task feel less overwhelming and more achievable. This strategy also helps us avoid the all or nothing trap that we discussed in episode 8, the perfectionism paradox. With these smaller deadlines, we're aiming for good enough at each stage, rather than waiting until the very end to achieve perfection, which often never happens.
So it's not just about setting a deadline, it's about how we set them and how we relate to them. What's the difference between a deadline that paralyzes us and one that motivates us?
That's a crucial distinction. Deadlines that paralyze us are usually those that feel unrealistic, overly punitive, or disconnected from our actual capacity. When a deadline feels impossible to meet, our stress response kicks in, and often the easiest way to cope with that overwhelming stress is to avoid the task altogether, hence procrastination. It's our brain's defense mechanism saying, this is too much, I can't handle it, so I'll just pretend it doesn't exist for now.
Right. Avoidance is our procrastination superpower.
Precisely. But the deadlines that motivate us are those that are clear, reasonable, and achievable. They're often set with a bit of breathing room, and crucially, they are embedded within a plan. When you have a plan and you see the deadline as a marker within that plan rather than an external threat, it transforms your perception. It becomes a helpful guide.
It sounds like self-compassion plays a role here too. Setting realistic deadlines for ourselves, acknowledging our own pace, and not beating ourselves up if we need to adjust an interim deadline slightly.
Absolutely. Self-compassion is fundamental. When we are kind to ourselves, we are less likely to fear failure, and therefore more likely to engage with tasks. Another key aspect of harnessing deadline pressure is understanding different types of deadlines. There are artificial deadlines, which are those we impose on ourselves, and external deadlines, which are set by others.
And I suspect artificial deadlines are where most procrastinators struggle because there's no immediate external consequence for missing them.
You're absolutely right. That's why the strategies we discussed in episode 5 about accountability are so vital for artificial deadlines. If you're setting your own deadline, tell someone. Share your goal and your timeline with a friend, a colleague, or join a study group. This external commitment makes the deadline feel more real and adds a layer of social pressure that can be very motivating.
So, if I decide I want to finish reading a book by next Friday, I should text a friend and say, "Hey, reading this book by Friday. I'll let you know how it goes."
That's a perfect example. It's simple, but incredibly effective. Now, let's talk about how deadlines can influence the quality of our work. Often, people worry that working under a deadline will force them to cut corners and produce sloppy work. However, research suggests that for many tasks, the opposite can be true. Knowing a deadline is approaching can actually sharpen our focus, improve our problem solving, and lead to more efficient decision making.
So, that frantic burst of energy isn't necessarily producing bad work. It's just producing work more efficiently because our cognitive resources are highly focused.
In essence, yes. When you're facing a deadline, your brain prioritizes tasks relevant to meeting that deadline and tends to downplay distractions. This heightened focus can lead to a more streamlined thought process. Think of it like this. If you're building a Lego castle and you have all day with no end in sight, you might spend hours sorting bricks, admiring their colors, and building intricate, unnecessary details. But if you have an hour to build it for a competition, you'll quickly identify the key structural elements, grab the necessary bricks, and assemble it with purpose.
That's a great analogy. It really highlights how constraints can foster creativity and efficiency, not just panic. So, is there a sweet spot for deadlines? Is there such a thing as too close a deadline or too far a deadline?
Absolutely. This is where the deadline dynamics really come into play. A deadline that's too far in the future, as we've discussed, lacks the motivational pull. It feels so distant that we can easily push it aside. On the other hand, a deadline that's too close with insufficient time to complete the task leads to that paralyzing anxiety we talked about. It triggers the fight or flight response, and avoidance is often the flight part.
So, for optimal results, we need deadlines that are challenging but achievable and that are set with enough lead time to allow for focused work without inducing panic.
Exactly. It requires some self-awareness and honest assessment of how long a task truly will take. This is where our micro-task breakdown from episode 4 becomes indispensable again. When you've broken a task down, you have a much clearer idea of the total time required, making it easier to set realistic interim and final deadlines.
And I suppose for some tasks, especially creative ones, it might be helpful to have a flexible deadline that allows for iteration, but then a hard stop for finalization.
That's a very insightful point. For creative processes, you might have a deadline for generating ideas, another for prototyping, and then a firm deadline for final delivery. This acknowledges that creativity isn't always linear and sometimes benefits from exploration and refinement over extended periods. The key is to be intentional about these phases and their associated timelines.
It sounds like one of the biggest shifts we need to make is in our mindset about deadlines. Moving from a place of dread and avoidance to one of empowerment and strategy.
Precisely. It's about reclaiming control. Instead of letting deadlines control us, we learn to use them as powerful motivators. It's about reframing that pressure. Think of any high-performing athlete. They thrive on the pressure of competition because they've trained rigorously and know they are prepared. They use that adrenaline, that tension as fuel. We could do the same with our tasks.
So, what are some practical steps we can take to start harnessing deadline pressure effectively?
Great question. First, clarify the deadline. Make sure you understand the exact date and time it's due. Second, break it down. As we've emphasized, divide the larger task into smaller, manageable steps. Third, set interim deadlines for each of those steps. Make them specific and realistic. Fourth, assign consequences or rewards for yourself or with an accountability partner. Will you treat yourself to something nice if you meet the interim deadline? Or what's the small, immediate consequence of missing it? Perhaps cleaning the dishes. It doesn't have to be severe, just enough to create a gentle nudge.
I like the idea of pairing rewards with meeting deadlines. It makes the process more positive.
Absolutely. And finally, schedule time for the work. Don't just have a deadline. Actively block out time in your calendar to work on the task. Treat these scheduled work sessions as non-negotiable appointments. You wouldn't miss a doctor's appointment. Treat your work time with the same respect.
So, to recap for our listeners, deadlines don't have to be our enemies. They can be powerful tools for focus and motivation. The key is to reframe them, break down tasks, set realistic interim deadlines, consider consequences or rewards, and most importantly, schedule the work time. By doing this, we can transform deadline pressure from a source of anxiety into a catalyst for action and completion.
Well said, Lisa. It's about recognizing that the pressure of a deadline is often the very thing that unlocks our ability to perform at our best, provided we approach it strategically and with a positive, proactive mindset. We've learned to start with steps, to break things down, and now we're learning to use the looming finish line as a helpful guide rather than a terrifying specter.
It's amazing how these concepts all weave together, from microtasks to accountability to harnessing deadlines. It all builds towards that proactive identity we touched on.
Indeed, and that's precisely what we'll be diving into next time. We'll explore how to actively cultivate a proactive identity, shifting from someone who reacts to circumstances to someone who shapes them.
Excellent. So, join us next time for episode 7, where we'll be discussing energy orchestration, scheduling for maximum output. Thanks for listening.
Welcome back to the Procrastination Fix. Last time we explored how to use deadlines effectively.
Today, we're talking about something even more fundamental: energy.
Absolutely. For years, productivity advice focused mainly on time management. But true productivity hinges on understanding and managing our personal energy levels. We call this energy orchestration.
Energy orchestration. It's like being a conductor for your own day, making sure the right tasks are played at the right intensity when your energy is at its best.
Exactly. It's about aligning the type of task with your current energy level for maximum output. We need to recognize when we have high, medium, and low energy.
So, the core idea is working with our natural rhythms, not against them.
Precisely. We all have times when our minds are sharp and focused, and times when we feel sluggish. This isn't laziness, it's our natural energy cycles.
I've definitely noticed that. My peak energy is usually mid-morning, but I slump after lunch.
That's common. The first step in energy orchestration is self-awareness. Become an energy detective. For a week or two, journal your focus and energy levels every couple of hours.
So, like 9 a.m., feeling alert, good concentration, and 1 p.m., feeling sluggish, easily distracted.
Yes, you're looking for patterns. Do you consistently hit a peak in the morning? Is there an afternoon dip? Do you get a second win later?
Once I see those patterns, How do I use that information to schedule my important tasks?
Match the task demands to your energy. Use your high energy periods for cognitively demanding tasks, those requiring deep concentration, problem solving, creativity, or strategic thinking.
Like writing a complex report, planning a new project, or doing detailed analysis.
Perfect examples. Your peak energy makes tackling these easier, faster, and with higher quality. It also reduces frustration, which is a major procrastination trigger.
It makes sense. Brainstorming new ideas is tough when I'm drained, but it flows when I'm feeling sharp.
And during your lower energy times, don't force demanding tasks. Instead, use that time for maintenance or support tasks that require less mental effort.
What kind of tasks would those be?
Routine emails, organizing files, administrative work, making non-complex calls, or light background reading.
So, if I'm feeling foggy after lunch, I could clear out my inbox instead of struggling with complex spreadsheet analysis.
Exactly. You're being productive without fighting your biology. This is a shift from time management to energy management. Think of it like a coach knowing when their star player needs to sprint and when they can conserve energy.
It feels counterintuitive because we're taught to work whenever we have time, but this acknowledges our human nature.
It does. It's about making smart, strategic choices, understanding that your brain functions differently at different times, and using that to your advantage.
So, the first step is self observation, identifying your energy peaks and valleys.
Right? Become a student of your own energy. Then, the second step is task energy matching, scheduling demanding tasks for your peak periods.
And assigning less demanding tasks to your low energy times.
Precisely. This creates a sustainable rhythm. Working with your natural energy flow means getting more done with less effort and stress, reducing internal friction and beating procrastination.
This also connects to breaking down tasks, doesn't it? If a big task is scheduled for peak energy and it's been broken into smaller steps, success feels much more achievable.
Absolutely. Those smaller steps feel like satisfying progress when your energy is high, creating positive momentum.
What about those with less predictable energy levels, perhaps due to shift work or parenting young children?
Energy orchestration is adaptable. If your schedule is variable, look for weekly or even hourly patterns of higher energy. Schedule your most intensive work during those windows.
So, it's about being flexible and capitalizing on any pockets of high energy you do have.
Exactly. It's a flexible, responsive approach. Be self-compassionate. Some days are better than others. The goal is to improve overall output and reduce overwhelm. It's a practice.
Practicing energy orchestration sounds like it would significantly reduce the urge to procrastinate. Tackling hard stuff when you're best equipped makes it feel less like a struggle.
That's the core. We procrastinate because tasks feel too big or unpleasant. Aligning challenging work with peak energy makes it more manageable and reduces resistance. Productivity feels less like a fight and more like a flow.
It reframes our day. Instead of just, what do I need to do? It's, when am I most capable of doing this effectively?
Precisely. You wouldn't run a marathon on little fuel. Your brain needs its peak energy to perform its most demanding marathons.
That's a great analogy. We've covered identifying energy patterns, matching them with demanding tasks, and using low energy times for less intensive work. This feels like a fundamental shift in approach.
It is. Once you implement it, you'll wonder how you managed without it. It makes productive time more impactful and less productive time less of a burden. You work smarter by synchronizing with your natural rhythms.
So, we've become energy conductors, orchestrating our tasks to match our natural ebbs and flows.
A perfect summary. This shift from time management to energy management is a game changer for anyone struggling with procrastination. It acknowledges our humanity and leverages our strengths.
It's about efficiency, but also well being. Not fighting yourself constantly leads to a more sustainable approach.
Absolutely. Remember, this is a skill that requires observation and adjustment. Keep experimenting and noticing.
Next episode, The perfectionism paradox, embracing good enough.
Thanks for listening. Welcome back. Last time, we delved into energy orchestration, learning how to schedule tasks to sync with our natural rhythms for maximum output. Now, we're tackling a topic that often masquerades as high standards but can be a huge roadblock: perfectionism.
Ah, perfectionism. I think many of us can relate to that being a secret saboteur of getting things done. It's that nagging voice that says, if I can't do it perfectly, I shouldn't do it at all. And that, of course, leads straight back to, I'll do it later.
Exactly, Lisa. It's the perfectionism paradox we're discussing today. It sounds like a good thing to strive for excellence, right? But when perfectionism becomes paralyzing, it's the exact opposite. It stops us from even starting or causes us to get stuck endlessly tweaking something instead of moving on.
So, we're not talking about having high standards. We're talking about the kind of perfectionism that prevents progress. Can you break down what's really going on psychologically?
Certainly, at its core, perfectionism is often rooted in a fear of failure or a fear of judgment. When you believe that anything less than perfect is unacceptable, you're essentially setting yourself up for disappointment. If the outcome isn't flawless, and let's be honest, are outcomes ever truly flawless? Then you feel like you failed. This can lead to a very unpleasant emotional cycle.
That makes sense. If the bar is set impossibly high, you're almost guaranteed to stumble. And then, instead of learning from the experience, you might just avoid the situation altogether next time, which is classic procrastination.
Precisely. Another aspect is that perfectionists often have a warped view of the process. They might focus solely on the end result. And if that end result isn't shimmering with flawlessness, they dismiss the entire effort. We've talked about breaking down tasks into micro tasks in earlier episodes. Perfectionism often rebels against this because even a micro task, if it's not done perfectly, feels like a failure.
Right. So, instead of just getting that one small, imperfect piece done, you might avoid starting it altogether. It's like saying, I need to write this entire book perfectly from the first word, so I'm just not going to write anything today.
That's a perfect example. And this is where the paradox really shines. The pursuit of perfection in a disordered way actually leads to mediocrity or inaction. You end up with less done, and what is done might be delayed significantly or not even attempted.
It's a trap. So, how do we escape this trap? What are the strategies for embracing good enough?
The first step is self-awareness. Recognizing that your pursuit of flawlessness is actually hindering you is crucial. Ask yourself, is this a genuine pursuit of excellence? Or is it a fear-driven avoidance of imperfection? Often, the distinction becomes clear when you consider the consequences of an action. Is the fear of a less than perfect outcome truly worse than the certainty of not completing the task at all?
That's a powerful question to ask yourself. And it ties back to how we've been building this framework throughout the series. We've emphasized starting, breaking things down, using deadlines. These are all about progress, not necessarily perfection.
Exactly. And that leads to our next strategy: reframing your definition of success. Success isn't always about a flawless final product. Success can be defined by effort, by learning, by completion, or by simply taking action. We need to develop a more flexible and compassionate view of our own work.
So, instead of this report needs to be the most brilliant report ever written, it becomes this report needs to be completed by Friday to inform the team's decision. The outcome is still important, but the standard for the outcome is adjusted to be achievable.
Precisely. And this is where we can bring back the concept of good enough. What constitutes good enough is often a much more practical and attainable standard than perfect. It means meeting the essential requirements, achieving the main objective, and being functional. It doesn't mean shoddy or low quality, but does mean free from unnecessary embellishments or overthinking that don't add significant value.
I like that distinction. Good enough isn't about being lazy, it's about being pragmatic and efficient. It's about understanding when further effort yields diminishing returns.
And to help with that, it's vital to set realistic expectations. Perfectionists often have an idealized vision of what a task, or the outcome of it, should look like. They might not account for unexpected challenges, time constraints, or even just the natural learning curve that comes with any activity. When you set realistic expectations, you're less likely to be derailed by minor imperfections. You'll see them as part of the process, not as evidence of your inadequacy.
So, planning for potential hiccups is actually part of setting realistic expectations, and it takes the pressure off.
Absolutely. Think of it this way. When you're baking a cake, is it the end of the world if the frosting isn't perfectly smooth or if there's a slight crack? The cake still tastes delicious, it's still a cake, and it still fulfills its purpose of being a dessert. The imperfection doesn't negate the entire achievement.
That's a great analogy. We often focus on the aesthetics of the frosting when the core purpose is the cake itself.
Another powerful technique is to focus on progress, not perfection. Remember when we talked about celebrating small wins? This is where that comes into play. When you shift your focus from the unattainable ideal to the tangible progress you're making, you build momentum. Every step forward, no matter how small or imperfect, is a victory. We need to actively acknowledge and appreciate these steps.
So, even if a paragraph isn't perfectly worded, but you've written one, that's progress. And that's something to acknowledge.
Yes, and this leads us to a vital point. Consciously practice making mistakes. This sounds counterintuitive, but it can be incredibly liberating. Try doing something deliberately imperfect. Maybe it's sending an email that isn't flawlessly polished, or trying a new recipe and accepting that it might not turn out exactly as the picture shows. The goal here is to experience that the world doesn't end when errors occur.
That's a fascinating idea. It's like exposure therapy for perfectionism. You're showing yourself that the feared outcome of imperfection isn't catastrophic.
Exactly. And when you do make a mistake or acknowledge something isn't perfect, focus on learning from it. Instead of beating yourself up, ask, what can I learn from this? How can this help me improve next time? This learning mindset is diametrically opposed to the perfectionist shutdown. It's about growth.
So, we're shifting from a fixed mindset where mistakes prove you're not good enough to a growth mindset where mistakes are opportunities to learn and get better.
That's a wonderful summary, Lisa. Another practical tool is to implement time limits for tasks. This is where our earlier discussions on deadlines and time blocking are incredibly relevant. If you have a defined amount of time to complete something, you're forced to make decisions and move forward. You can't get stuck polishing indefinitely. The time limit acts as an external constraint that compels you to aim for completion within that boundary, rather than an unattainable ideal.
So, if I set aside an hour to draft that report, I have to accept that after that hour, I'll have a draft that's good enough to move forward with, rather than spending 3 hours trying to make each sentence sing.
You've got it. And it's also important to build systems and processes that account for human error. No system devised by humans can be completely foolproof, nor should it be expected to be. Recognizing the inherent fallibility in any process allows you to be more forgiving of yourself and others when imperfections inevitably arise. This creates a less judgmental environment, both internally and externally.
That's a really helpful perspective. It's about designing things with the understanding that things won't always go perfectly, and that's okay.
Another strategy is to seek feedback early and often. Perfectionists sometimes delay sharing their work until they feel it's absolutely ready, which often means never. By getting feedback on drafts and prototypes, you get external perspectives that can help you identify what truly needs improvement and what is already solid. This also prevents you from going down rabbit holes perfecting things that don't even need attention according to others.
So, rather than trying to be the sole judge of perfection, You're using other people to help you calibrate your standards and identify what's truly important.
Exactly. And finally, let's talk about self-compassion. This is perhaps the most important element. Perfectionism is often accompanied by harsh self-criticism. When you stumble, instead of self-flagellation, practice treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer a friend. Acknowledge that you're doing your best, that mistakes are part of being human, and that imperfection doesn't diminish your worth.
Self-compassion feels like the antidote to the relentless inner critic that perfectionists often have. It's about being on your own side, even when things aren't flawless.
So, to recap, perfectionism is a major procrastination trap because it sets impossibly high standards, fueled by fear of failure or judgment. We combat it by cultivating self-awareness, reframing success to focus on effort and completion, embracing good enough as practical and effective, setting realistic expectations, and prioritizing progress over flawlessness. We also learn to embrace imperfection by practicing deliberate imperfect actions, viewing mistakes as learning opportunities, using time limits to manage task duration, building error-tolerant systems, seeking early feedback, and most importantly, practicing self-compassion.
That's a comprehensive toolkit against the perfectionism paradox. It's about being kind to ourselves and recognizing that progress, not perfect output, is the real goal for staying productive and moving forward.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. Next episode, Reward Systems, the Art of Positive Reinforcement. Welcome back, everyone, to the Procrastination Fix. We've discussed perfectionism. Now, let's focus on motivation through reward systems.
Yes, Alex. We've explored why we delay and how to start. Now, let's make the process itself rewarding. It's about seeking pleasure, not just avoiding pain.
Exactly. Our brains are wired for rewards. Like training a dog with treats, we can use positive outcomes to encourage desired actions.
So, we're essentially setting up our own bonus system to get ourselves to do things. It's a cool way to self-motivate.
Precisely. And this builds on accountability from episode 5. We're building our own positive reinforcement. The key is making rewards desirable and clearly linked to specific accomplishments.
What kind of accomplishments are we talking about? Big ones or small ones?
A mix is best. Major milestones can earn bigger rewards, but small rewards for breaking down tasks are also powerful.
So, if I have a big research paper, I could get a fancy coffee for the outline and then an hour of Netflix for finishing the first research section.
That's the essence. Those are your reinforcements telling your brain, that was good, do more. It makes the task less daunting and the journey more enjoyable.
That makes sense. It feels less like a chore and more like a path to something good. But what if the reward might lead to more procrastination, like too much screen time?
That's a critical point. Rewards must be motivating but not sabotage your goals. If you use screen time, set clear limits like one episode or 30 minutes.
So, a specific, bounded reward, not an open-ended one.
Correct. And avoid rewards that undo your progress. If your goal is health, a huge junk food binge might not be ideal. Choose rewards aligning with your values.
Smart reinforcement, not just indulgence. What are some generally good reward ideas?
Anything that truly excites you. Tangible items like a book or gadget. Experiences like a massage, a movie, or meeting friends. Even quiet relaxation time can be a reward.
I like the idea of a dedicated hobby session. Framing it as a reward for a tough task makes it feel earned.
Absolutely. It reframes your perspective as earned leisure that recharges you. You can also tie rewards to the task itself.
How would that work?
If you're learning a new software, reward yourself with a related book or a nicer notebook. You're enhancing the very activity you're completing.
That's clever. It's like leveling up within the task. It connects to intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, doesn't it? We use an extrinsic reward to build a stronger intrinsic connection.
Exactly. Initially, you might do it for the reward, but consistent completion and positive feelings can make the task itself more satisfying. You start seeing value and enjoyment in the process.
So, the reward system acts as a bridge, getting us over the initial hump until the task builds its own momentum.
Right. And it works perfectly with micro tasks from episode 4. Even a tiny accomplishment, like sending one email, can earn a small reward, like a moment of mindfulness or a stretch. These add up.
It's building a habit of accomplishment. Every small win reinforces the behavior. And for those larger rewards, how do we ensure we follow through?
By defining them clearly and committing. State, when I achieve X, I will get Y. Write it down, put it on your calendar, tell someone. Treat it as a prepaid pleasure.
So, if I finish a coding project by month end, my reward could be a weekend getaway. I should pre-book it.
That's a great example. And vary your rewards. Novelty keeps them motivating. Have a menu of options to keep things fresh.
A varied diet for motivation. Great advice. So, to recap, reward systems are key to combating procrastination by linking progress to positive outcomes. Rewards should be desirable, clearly linked to achievements, and not undermine goals. Smart rewards can foster intrinsic motivation and build momentum, especially when used with microtasks or for major milestones.
That's a perfect summary. By building in reinforcements, we train our brains to associate productive work with pleasure, making progress more sustainable and enjoyable.
It's about making the journey as appealing as the destination. We're creating our own internal cheerleading squad.
And that squad will help us for our next topic. Next episode, we'll explore optimizing your environment to create a productivity hub.
Ooh, I'm excited. Where we work really matters.
It truly does. Thanks for listening to the Procrastination Fix.
Happy learning!
Welcome back. Last time we talked about energy. Today, we focus on your surroundings.
That's right, Alex. Our physical and digital worlds can either help or hinder us.
Absolutely. A messy desk or constant notifications make focusing incredibly difficult. Our environment is a key factor in our ability to act.
It's like trying to swim with weights on. This episode will create a productivity hub to help us start and finish tasks.
Exactly. We'll cover decluttering, minimizing digital distractions, and setting up your space for focus. This links to our energy discussions.
Sounds great. Let's begin with the tangible, our physical environment. What's the first step?
Decluttering. A messy space leads to a cluttered mind, causing overwhelm. We want mental clarity.
I feel that resistance too. It's hard to start when it's messy.
This means removing excess and things that don't serve a purpose in that space.
How can people tackle this without feeling overwhelmed?
Start small, focusing on your primary workspace, your desk, your computer area.
So, a micro task for decluttering?
Yes, dedicate 15 minutes daily or an hour weekly. Remove items, discard unnecessary papers.
And for things we need but don't use daily?
Use storage, filing systems, trays, drawers. Label them. Everything needs a home. This prevents future clutter.
So systems are key. Does aesthetics matter too?
Absolutely. Consider colors, calming elements, plants, art, and good lighting.
Natural light makes a huge difference for me. A dim room drains my energy.
Natural light is ideal. If not possible, good artificial lighting mimicking daylight. Temperature and background noise are also important. Experiment to find your optimal setting.
It sounds like we're creating a personalized productivity zone.
Precisely. Now, the digital realm. This is where many of us lose hours.
Notifications, social media, the internet's constant lure?
Exactly. These interrupt our concentration and drain our mental energy.
How do we build a digital fortress?
Control notifications. Turn off non-essential alerts on all devices. Ask yourself, does this need my immediate attention?
Just disabling them entirely is a powerful step.
For essential ones, make them less intrusive. Use do not disturb modes.
Closing unnecessary browser tabs is a lifesaver for me. Each tab is a distraction.
Excellent habit. Think of tabs as open doors. Close them when you're done with the task.
What about websites that are major time sinks?
Use tools like browser extensions to block specific websites during work hours.
Using technology against itself for productivity. Clever.
Be intentional. Schedule times for checking email or social media, like appointments.
This conserves mental energy, supporting our episode 7 discussion.
Exactly. Now, setting up your workspace for optimal focus. This is about active design.
Making it conducive to doing the work.
Yes. What tools do you need most often? Keep them within easy reach.
Strategic placement of essentials.
Yes. Also consider ergonomics. Comfortable chair, correct screen height. Physical discomfort distracts.
A good chair truly helps sustain concentration.
It's a game changer. If possible, create different zones. Deep work, admin tasks, breaks. This signals to your brain what to do.
Creating mental anchors through physical space.
Even a small desk can be mentally divided. This side is for writing.
We're using our environment to cue our brains.
Definitely. And your digital workspace matters too. A clear folder structure and tidy desktop are crucial.
Like a well-organized digital filing cabinet.
Precisely. Create dedicated folders for projects. It saves time later.
So to recap, 1. Declutter and organize your physical space. Create mental space by tidying physical space.
2. Minimize digital distractions. Build digital boundaries by managing notifications and online access.
3. Strategically set up your workspace. Design your environment, physical and digital, to support your workflow.
You've summarized it perfectly. Your environment is an active participant. By designing it, you create a powerful ally.
It's like setting up the game field for success.
Exactly. It all connects to our strategies for energy, tasks, and mindset.
So, listeners, what small change can you make today to optimize your workspace?
That's the perfect way to end. Next time, we'll discuss building a proactive identity and shifting your mindset. Next episode, building a proactive identity, shifting your mindset. Welcome back to the Procrastination Fix. Today, we're focusing on the core of who you are.
That's right, Alex. In previous episodes, we've talked about what to do, like creating microtasks or setting up reward systems. This time, it's about who you become. We're moving beyond temporary fixes to talk about building a truly proactive identity.
Exactly. Think about it. Have you ever told yourself, I'm just not a morning person, or I'm terrible at organizing? Those are powerful statements that become self-fulfilling prophecies. If you believe you're a procrastinator, you'll act like one.
So, instead of just fighting procrastination, we need to actively cultivate the opposite. We need to see ourselves as proactive people.
Precisely. It's about shifting your self-perception. Instead of seeing yourself as someone who struggles with procrastination, you start seeing yourself as someone who gets things done. This might sound simple, but it's incredibly profound.
How does this proactive identity actually work? Is it just about saying positive affirmations?
It's more than just affirmations, though those can be a part of it. It's about aligning your beliefs and actions. When you truly believe you are a proactive person, your choices, your habits, and your responses to challenges naturally start to reflect that belief. It's a fundamental shift in your internal narrative.
I can see how that would be more powerful than just trying to force yourself to do something. It's like changing the operating system instead of just running a new program.
That's a Welcome back to the Procrastination Fix. Today, we're building and maintaining momentum.
That's right, Alex. We've covered so many excellent strategies in the past episodes, like taking that very first step, the power of microtasks, and even the importance of a proactive identity. Now, it's about weaving all of that together to create a self-sustaining engine of progress. We want to build a momentum machine.
Precisely. Think about it like pushing a heavy boulder uphill. It takes a massive effort to get it moving initially, but once it's rolling, it gathers speed and it becomes easier to keep it going. That initial push is like overcoming your procrastination barriers. The downhill roll, or even just maintaining steady progress, is what we mean by momentum.
I love that analogy, Alex. So, how do we create that initial push that leads to a rolling boulder? We've talked about starting, but what about those first few successful actions?
This is where early wins become incredibly powerful. When you complete a small task, or even a meaningful part of a larger one, your brain releases dopamine. This is that feel-good chemical. It reinforces the positive behavior. So, that micro task you completed, it's not just a task off your list. It's a little reward that tells your brain, hey, this feels good. Let's do more of this.
So, embracing those small accomplishments, even if they seem insignificant, actually builds a foundation for more action. It's like a positive feedback loop.
Exactly. And it directly ties back to our discussion on reward systems. The reward isn't just the big end goal. It's the satisfaction of completing each step. When you recognize and perhaps even celebrate these small achievements, you amplify that positive reinforcement. You're not just working towards something, you're experiencing success along the way.
That makes so much sense. It's about making the process enjoyable, or at least satisfying, so that continuing feels natural, not like a chore. But what about when the inevitable happens? When the boulder seems to stop rolling, or we hit a patch of rough terrain?
The dips, they are absolutely inevitable. No one maintains peak momentum 24/7. This is where resilience and proactive strategies come into play. Let's revisit the idea of deadlines. While deadlines can be a motivator, we also know they can induce stress. Momentum isn't about constant, frantic activity. It's about consistent, sustainable progress.
So when we hit a dip, it doesn't mean we've failed, right? It just means we need to adjust our strategy.
Precisely. Instead of seeing a dip as a sign to stop, see it as a signal to reassess. Are you overextended? Is the task still aligned with your goals? Perhaps you need to revisit the idea of breaking it down even further. Can you chop that large task into even smaller, more manageable pieces?
That's a great point. Sometimes, when things feel overwhelming, it's because we're looking at the mountain instead of the next few steps. And we talked about building a proactive identity. How does that tie into sustaining momentum?
A proactive identity is like having a built-in pilot light for your motivation. If you see yourself as someone who gets things done, when you encounter a slowdown, you're less likely to spiral into self-doubt. Instead of thinking, I've lost my motivation, a proactive identity might prompt you to think, okay, things have slowed. What's a small action I can take right now to get moving again?
So it's about internalizing that sense of agency. You are the driver, not a passenger, of your progress.
Exactly. And consider your environment. If you're feeling momentum flagging, is your workspace conducive to focus? Are there distractions that are pulling you away? Sometimes a simple change of scenery or eliminating those nagging interruptions could be enough to reignite the spark.
It's so true. I've noticed that if I'm feeling a bit sluggish, even just tidying my desk can make a difference. It's like clearing the physical space helps clear my mental space too.
Absolutely. It's about creating conditions that favor progress. Now, let's talk about energy orchestration. Even with the best intentions, if you're trying to push your boulder when you're completely drained, you're going to struggle. Momentum isn't about brute force, it's about smart exertion.
So, if you notice your momentum dipping, maybe it's not a sign of laziness, but a sign that you need to rest or shift to a different, less demanding task.
Precisely. Listen to your body and your mind. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do to maintain momentum is to take a strategic break. Step away, do something completely different, and then return with fresh energy. This prevents burnout, which is the ultimate momentum killer. Think of it like a pit stop for your boulder, a quick, efficient refuel and reset.
That's a really important distinction. We often think momentum means constant motion, but a well-timed pause can ensure that motion is sustainable. It's not about stopping, but about refueling so you can keep going.
And this ties into the idea of creating systems. We want to build internal systems that support sustained progress. This could be as simple as a daily check-in with yourself, reviewing what you accomplished yesterday, and planning your next small step for today.
So, the momentum machine isn't just about a burst of effort, but about building reliable mechanisms for continuous movement.
Exactly. Let's break down the core components of building this momentum machine. First, leverage early wins. Those small successes are rocket fuel. Don't dismiss them. Acknowledge them and let them energize you.
Got it. Small wins, big impact.
Second, anticipate and navigate dips. Don't be surprised or discouraged when progress slows. See it as an opportunity to reassess, readjust, and perhaps break tasks down even further. It's not a failure, it's a course correction.
So, dips are part of the journey, not the end of it.
Third, align with your proactive identity. Remind yourself that you are someone who moves forward. This internal belief system helps you bounce back when challenges arise.
The I get things done mindset.
Fourth, optimize your environment and energy. Ensure your surroundings support your work and, crucially, respect your energy levels. Strategic breaks are your friend, not your enemy.
So, it's about working smarter, not just harder, and listening to our own needs.
And fifth, build consistent internal systems, daily reviews, planning your next micro step. These create a reliable rhythm that keeps the machine running smoothly.
So, just to recap those core components of building our momentum machine, we embrace and leverage those early wins for that feel-good reinforcement. We prepare for and navigate the inevitable dips, seeing them as signals to adjust rather than stop. We lean into our proactive identity, believing in our ability to make progress. We thoughtfully manage our environment and energy levels, recognizing the power of strategic breaks. And finally, we establish consistent internal routines and systems that keep us moving forward day after day.
You've summarized it perfectly, Lisa. It's about creating a self-perpetuating cycle. The momentum you build from overcoming procrastination leads to more small wins, which reinforces your proactive identity, which helps you better manage your energy and environment, allowing you to tackle even more tasks, and so on. It's a beautiful, powerful cycle.
It really is. This episode has shown me how much momentum is a result of conscious effort and strategic planning, rather than just some elusive spark of inspiration.
And remember, this momentum machine doesn't just apply to big, daunting projects. It applies to your daily tasks, your personal goals, your learning journey, anything you want to accomplish consistently. By building this machine, you're not just finishing tasks, you're cultivating a more effective and resilient way of living.
It feels like we've truly connected the dots between starting, managing, and now sustaining.
Indeed. And on that powerful note, we're nearing the end of our series, but not quite there yet. In our next episode, we'll be discussing navigating setbacks and relapses. Because even with the best momentum machine, life happens, and we want to be prepared to bounce back stronger. So, make sure you join us for episode 13. Welcome back to the Procrastination Fix. In our last episode, we talked about building momentum, that incredible feeling when progress starts to snowball. But what happens when that momentum screeches to a halt? What happens when you find yourself backsliding, slipping into old habits, or facing a significant setback?
That's a crucial question, Alex, because life isn't a straight line upward, is it? We can implement all these fantastic strategies for starting and finishing tasks, but inevitably, things happen. We get sick, emergencies pop up, or sometimes we just fall off the wagon. These moments can feel incredibly discouraging, and that's exactly what we're diving into today, navigating setbacks and relapses, and building that all-important resilience.
Exactly, Lisa. We spent a lot of time talking about building systems, initiating action, and fostering a proactive identity. But the reality is, setbacks are not failures. They are just part of the process. Think of it like learning to ride a bike. You wobble, you might even fall, but you get back up and try again. Resilience is that getting back up muscle.
So, the first step when a setback hits is to not beat ourselves up. That sounds simple, but I imagine it's incredibly hard for many people.
It is precisely the hardest part. Our inner critic can be relentless. When we relapse into procrastination, it's easy to descend into shame and self-blame. This, unfortunately, is a recipe for staying stuck. The first and most critical step in navigating a setback is self-compassion. We need to acknowledge that it happened, accept it without judgment, and remind ourselves that this is a temporary detour, not a final destination.
Self-compassion. Okay, so instead of saying, I'm so lazy, I can never stick to anything, we might say, okay, I didn't get that done today. I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, and that's understandable. What's one small thing I can do?
Precisely. And remember episode 11, where we talked about building a proactive identity. This is where that identity is truly tested and strengthened. A proactive identity isn't about never faltering. It's about having the belief that you can recover from falter. So, after self-compassion, the next step is analysis, but a constructive, curious kind of analysis.
Constructive analysis? What does that look like when you've just spent the afternoon scrolling through social media instead of working on that important project?
It looks like asking yourself questions without judgment. Instead of, why am I like this? Try, what were the specific circumstances that led to me procrastinating today? Were you feeling unmotivated? Overwhelmed by the task? Distracted by something in your environment? Did you lack clarity on the next step? Identifying the triggers and the root causes of the relapse is like diagnosing an illness so you can treat it effectively.
So it's about understanding the why so you can prevent it from happening again in the same way. That makes sense. If I know that a certain type of notification on my phone derails me, I can take steps to manage that.
Exactly. And this analysis often leads to a crucial insight. Sometimes, the setback isn't about a lack of willpower. It's about a flaw in the system or a miscalculation in our planning. This brings us to the third strategy, reassessment and adjustment.
Reassessment and adjustment. So after we've been kind to ourselves and figured out why we slipped, we look at our original plan or task and tweak it?
Precisely. Perhaps the task was too large, and we need to break it down further, drawing on the principles from episode 4. Maybe the deadline was unrealistic, and we need to renegotiate it or adjust our expectations. Sometimes, the issue is with our energy management, which we covered in episode 7. Perhaps we scheduled a demanding task for a time when our energy levels are naturally low.
This sounds like a very practical, actionable approach. It's not about saying, this plan failed, but rather, this plan needs a slight adjustment to work better for me right now.
That's the spirit. And an important part of this adjustment phase is also reminding yourself of the progress you have made. Don't let one bad day or one missed week erase all the hard work you've put in. This is where those memory anchors we talked about can be so valuable. Go back to your completed tasks, your positive feedback, those moments where you did succeed. This helps to reinforce that proactive identity and counteracts the negativity of the relapse.
Absolutely. It's like looking at your fitness tracker and seeing all the days you did workout, not just the one day you skipped the gym. Shifting the focus to the positives helps maintain motivation.
And speaking of motivation, sometimes a setback is a sign that we've lost touch with our why. Why is this task or goal important to us? Episode 1 touched on this, but it's worth revisiting when you're feeling demotivated. Reconnecting with your core values and the ultimate purpose behind your efforts can reignite that drive.
So, we've got self-compassion, constructive analysis, reassessment, and adjustment, remembering past successes and reconnecting with our purpose. These are all excellent internal strategies. What about external support? Because sometimes the shame can make us isolate ourselves.
You've hit on a crucial point, Lisa. External support systems, which we discussed in episode 5, are vital during setbacks. Reach out to a friend, a mentor, a colleague, or even a support group. Sharing your struggle can alleviate the burden of carrying it alone. Often, an outside perspective can offer solutions or encouragement that you might not be able to find on your own.
And having someone you're accountable to, even informally, can provide that extra nudge to get back on track. They might remind you of your goals or simply offer a listening ear.
Exactly. They can help you see the setback for what it is, a bump in the road, not the end of the road. Another powerful strategy, especially for preventing the next relapse, is to actively learn from the experience. Every setback is a learning opportunity. What did you learn about your triggers, your planning, your energy levels? Documenting these lessons learned can create a valuable roadmap for the future.
So, keeping a little journal or a notes file of what worked and what didn't work during challenging periods.
Precisely. Think of it as building a personal resilience playbook. And on that note, let's weave in the concept of identity again. Remember in episode 11, we talked about shifting from I'm a procrastinator to I am someone who gets things done. And sometimes I need to pause and re-strategize. This is where that identity truly solidifies.
So when a setback happens, instead of it reinforcing the procrastinator identity, we can see it as evidence of our resilient person identity because we're actively working through it.
You've got it. A resilient person doesn't avoid falling. They learn how to get up with grace and efficiency. They don't see a setback as proof of their inherent flaws, but as a challenge to overcome. And this often involves forgiving yourself. Yes, it's worth mentioning forgiveness separately. It's about releasing the guilt and the shame so you can move forward with a clearer mind.
Forgiveness is such a powerful release. So, let's recap the core strategies for navigating setbacks and relapses. First, we embrace self-compassion. Don't condemn yourself. Acknowledge the struggle. Second, engage in constructive analysis. Figure out the why behind the slip-up by looking at triggers and circumstances.
Third, reassess and adjust your plan. Maybe the task needs breaking down further or your schedule needs tweaking. Fourth, remember your past successes. Revisit what you've accomplished to reinforce your capabilities. Fifth, reconnect with your purpose, your why, to reignite motivation.
Sixth, leverage external support systems. Talk to friends, mentors, or support groups. And seventh, learn from the experience. Document your insights to build your resilience playbook. And finally, practice forgiveness, releasing the guilt to move forward effectively.
Excellent summary. Lisa, these aren't just theoretical ideas. They are practical tools for building genuine resilience. Think of resilience not as being impenetrable, but as the ability to bounce back, to adapt, and to continue moving forward, even when the path gets bumpy. It's about embracing your proactive identity, not as someone who never stumbles, but as someone who always gets back on their feet.
And this is so important because as we approach the end of our series, we know that life will always throw curveballs. Learning to navigate these moments gracefully is key to long-term success and well-being, not just in tackling procrastination, but in all aspects of life.
Indeed. And this leads us perfectly into our final episode, where we will discuss strategies for reaching that finish line, celebrating your accomplishments, and embedding these habits for lasting change.
Join us next time for our final episode.
Welcome back. Today we're talking about crossing the finish line.
That's right, Alex. We've covered so much ground, from understanding why we delay, to breaking tasks down, building accountability, managing our energy, and even overcoming perfectionism. Now, our absolute focus is on that crucial final push, how to actually, finally, get things done, and then, importantly, how to celebrate that achievement.
Exactly, Lisa. So often we get close to finishing something, and that's when the resistance can ramp up again. It's like the finish line is in sight, but suddenly it feels even more daunting. This is where strategic completion comes in. The ultimate goal is completion. We need to recognize when we're in that final stage and employ techniques specifically designed to see it through.
I can definitely relate to that. It's like the bulk of the work is done, and maybe the motivation wanes a bit because the most challenging parts are behind us. So, Alex, what are some of those key strategies for navigating that final stretch?
One of the most powerful tools is what I call the final sprint. Think of it like a runner in a race. They've paced themselves, they've pushed through the middle miles, and now, with the finish line approaching, they dig deep for that extra burst of energy. For us, the final sprint involves dedicating a concentrated block of time, free from distractions, to finalize the remaining tasks. It's about saying, for the next X hours or for today, my entire mission is to get this done.
So, it's about creating a sort of high-intensity work session specifically for the very end of a project. That makes sense. It's like a targeted effort to just get over the line.
Precisely. And to make that final sprint effective, we need to be very clear about what done actually looks like for this project. If the definition of done is fuzzy, the sprint can become directionless. So, before you even start the sprint, ask yourself, what are the absolute final, non-negotiable tasks that need to be completed for this to be considered finished? Write them down.
That clarity is so important. If you don't know what the end point is, you can run in circles. So, after we've defined done and committed to a final sprint, what else helps?
Minimizing scope creep is crucial here. When you're in the final stages, it's tempting to think, oh, while I'm here, I'll just add this one little thing. But that little thing can easily snowball and push the finish line further away. Be fiercely protective of the original scope. If a new idea comes up and it's genuinely valuable, make a note of it for future projects or a revised version, but resist the urge to integrate it now. Is it something you've experienced, Lisa? That temptation to tweak just a little more?
Oh, absolutely. It's like a decorator who's almost finished painting a room. They see a tiny scratch they missed or a smudge, and suddenly they're repainting the entire wall or even a whole room just because of something small. Sticking to the original plan in the final moments is a real discipline.
It truly is. And speaking of discipline, we also need to address the physical and mental environment. During this final sprint, consciously create an environment that supports completion. This might mean turning off notifications on your phone and computer, letting others know you're in a focused work period, clearing your workspace, or even listening to specific types of music that help you concentrate. We've talked about optimizing your environment before, but it bears repeating here because it's exceptionally important when you're this close to the finish line.
So, isolating yourself as much as possible from distractions and making your surroundings conducive to focused work. It's about removing friction, right?
Exactly. Removing friction and creating the conditions for success. Now, once the work is actually done, and I mean truly completed, all tasks signed off, we come to what many people skip, the celebration. This is not a luxury. It's a necessity for long-term productivity.
The celebration part. I think this is where many of us fall short. We finish a project, feel relieved, and then immediately jump to the next thing or start thinking about what went wrong. Why is celebrating so vital?
Our brains are wired for reward. When we complete a task or a project, and we associate that completion with a positive experience, a reward of some kind, our brain learns to associate finishing with good feelings. This makes us more likely to want to finish things in the future. It's a powerful behavioral reinforcement loop. Without this celebration, the brain might start to see completion as simply the end of a struggle, not an achievement to be savored.
So, by celebrating, we're essentially training our future selves to be eager to complete tasks.
Precisely. And the celebration doesn't have to be extravagant. It can be as simple as taking a moment to acknowledge your accomplishment, sharing the news with a friend or family member, treating yourself to a favorite meal or activity, or even just taking a genuine break to relax and reflect. The key is that it's a conscious act of recognition and enjoyment tied directly to the completion.
I like the idea of conscious recognition. It's about being mindful of the effort and the outcome. What are some ways we can make this celebration meaningful without it becoming a huge production?
One effective method is building completion milestones into your project from the start. For larger projects, these are like mini finish lines along the way. When you hit one of these milestones, you can have a small, pre-planned reward. This keeps motivation up during the project. Then, for the final completion, the celebration can be scaled up accordingly. For example, if finishing a chapter of a book earns you an hour of guilt-free reading, finishing the entire book might earn you a weekend getaway. It's about proportion and planning.
That makes it feel less like an afterthought and more like an integrated part of the process. It's something to look forward to throughout.
Absolutely. And it's also about framing. Instead of saying, okay, I finished that, now what? Try saying, I finished that. Look what I accomplished. What a great feeling. This shift in internal dialogue can be incredibly potent. It's about cultivating a proactive identity, as we've discussed in earlier episodes. You're someone who starts and finishes things.
That proactive identity piece really ties everything together, doesn't it? All the strategies we've discussed, breaking down tasks, accountability, managing energy, overcoming perfectionism, and now, strategic completion and celebration, they all build towards becoming that person.
They do. Think about the momentum machine we talked about. Completion and celebration are the engine's fuel. Each completed project, each celebrated success, adds to your sense of capability and generates the positive momentum to tackle the next challenge. It reinforces your belief in your ability to start and finish.
And what about setbacks, Alex? We've discussed resilience, but in the context of the finish line, what if something unexpected happens right at the end? Do we just abandon ship?
Absolutely not. Navigating setbacks is an ongoing skill. If you hit a snag right at the end, the first step is to pause and assess, just as we've advised throughout the series. Is it a solvable problem with a slight adjustment? Or is it a sign that the project's scope needs reevaluation? If it's solvable, apply the same problem-solving skills you've developed. If it requires a reevaluation, do that honestly. The key is not to let a final hurdle become an insurmountable wall. Remember the art of the first step? Sometimes, even when finishing, you need to take a new first step to get to the actual finish line.
So it's about applying the same principles of problem solving and adaptability, even when you're tired and ready to be done. That makes sense. It's a testament to the resilience we've been building.
Indeed. And looking back on the entire series, from understanding the procrastination puzzle in episode 1 to mastering the finish line today, we've covered a comprehensive toolkit. We've delved into the psychology of delay, the power of small steps, the importance of support, the art of deadlines, energy management, conquering perfectionism, the role of rewards, optimizing your space, building a proactive mindset, sustaining momentum, and navigating those inevitable bumps in the road.
It's been an incredible journey, Alex. We've learned that procrastination isn't a character flaw, but a complex behavior with underlying causes that can be addressed with the right strategies. And the ultimate aim of all these strategies is to not just start, but to finish and to feel good about it.
That's the core message. The procrastination fix is about empowering you to take control of your tasks and your time, to move from intention to action, and from action to accomplishment. It's about building a sustainable system for productivity that allows you to achieve your goals and live a more fulfilling life. We want you to feel confident in your ability to tackle what matters and see it through to completion, celebrating each victory along the way.
And this isn't just about getting through a to-do list. It's about building a life where you can pursue your passions, complete meaningful projects, and feel a sense of mastery and satisfaction. The strategies we've shared are tools, and like any tools, they become more powerful with practice. So, keep applying them, keep experimenting, and keep celebrating those wins, big and small.
That's the perfect summary, Lisa. We've equipped you with the knowledge and the techniques. Now, it's your turn to implement them and experience the transformation. Remember, the journey from starting to finishing is where growth happens, and the celebration afterward is the well-deserved recognition of your effort and success.
Thank you for joining us on this entire series. It's been a pleasure exploring these topics with you and Alex.
Thanks for listening to the series.